Good morning, beloved. I am Reverend Robin Tanner, co-minister of Beacon Unitarian Universalist congregation, a community that is committed to radical inclusion, to feeding the human spirit and healing the world. And I am actually joining you this morning live from Beacon in Summit, New Jersey. It is so good to be with you all. Happy Valentine's Day in the most radical, non-commercial, liberating way we can possibly wish you. Happy Valentine's Day. Please know, as my words reach you wherever you may be, that we are sending you love and sending you light this day. I invite you to introduce yourself in the chat. If you have a chat function, if you're on YouTube or you're joining us on Facebook, to share your name and where you're joining us from this day. And if you are enjoying these services, if you find them enriching, nourishing, centering, life-giving, take a moment and tell a friend. You can click that share button, you can copy the link and maybe send an email or a text, and help us magnify the light and be a beacon together. I also want to wish everyone a happy Lunar New Year. It is the year of the ox. As a very stubborn soul, I don't know if oxes, I think that's the plural, yes, are particularly stubborn, but I'm identifying with this year with some tenacity. Maybe you are too. I'm really grateful to be joined by some fantastic guests this morning. Reverend Emilie Boggis, my colleague and co-minister here at Beacon, is with us. Antonio Sullivan, Beacon member and member of the Racial Justice Team, is here this first Sunday of our special plate collection for Faith in New Jersey. Tony, I wonder if you'd share a few words with folks who are joining us today.
Yeah, sure. Good morning, everybody. It's very, very difficult at times with work and life and two small kids to remain as engaged in the work of the Racial Justice Team and the Beacon community as I would like. But I just wanted to mention how grateful I am for the work that we are able to do. And I appreciate everyone's consistent compassion and understanding for all that we're juggling right now. I join when I can. I do what I can, and together we move the work forward. And I just wanted to welcome others to, plug in as often as possible.
Thanks so much, Tony. That's a beautiful, really way to describe what is possible in shared ministry and what we believe in at Beacon. Every little light makes the beacon. Well, friends, it is the annual Sex Sunday. Don't worry, PG rated, G rated, I'm not sure what the appropriate rating is, but for all ages. And as we begin, Reverend Emilie is going to call us into a space of considering what is of worth.
Absolutely. Thank you to Tony and to Reverend Robin for welcoming us so wonderfully into this service. And I call you to be here now. Come, you who are pure of heart, who somehow in the midst of isolation and fear discovered the abundance of love. Come, those among us this day who mourn, whose hearts have known loss and been broken open by that love and that loss, losses great and small, those who ache this day with grief. Come, all of you who are poor in spirit, tired and weary, who wonder if this feeling of fatigue is all there is. And come, all who are poor in body, tired and weary of the work required to barely survive. Come, the righteous among us, those who have been persecuted and those who have witnessed persecution, those striving for justice, not for themselves alone, but for one and for all. Come, dear meek ones, whose gentleness is so needed in our world right now. Come, all you peacemakers, hiding under the desks in this time of disruption and chaos. Come out from under your desks and remember your gifts. Come, yes, you, who both have known and shown mercy. You whose empathy liberates all from the stories that bind us. So come, strangers, Come, friends, come, beloved. For together in this sacred hour, we dream beloved community into being.
Though I may speak with bravest fire and have the gift to all inspire, and have not love, my words are vain, as sounding brass and hopeless gain. Though I may give all I possess, and striving so my love profess, but not be given my love within, the prophet soon turns strangely thin. Come, Spirit, come, our hearts control, our spirits long to be made whole. Let inward love guide every deed. By this we worship and are free.
Hi, we're the Ruggiero family. I'm Milo.
I'm Isabel.
I'm Mary Alice.
I'm Steve.
This morning we light our home chalice, the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith, with these words. We
light this chalice for the light of truth and reality, the warmth of love and compassion, and the fire of commitment and promise. We light the symbol of our faith as we gather together.
It's Valentine's Day. February 14th is not an official holiday like Martin Luther King Day or President's Day when we honor those who were our leaders. But it sure feels special, doesn't it? Candy and cards, gifts of jewelry or flowers, and everywhere we look are colorful paper hearts. As Unitarian Universalists, we take time to understand and are inspired by the many celebrations our communities and faith traditions have in common. Our third principle lifts up the importance of responsibly searching for the fuller truth of our history. This month, we also celebrate the achievements and the contributions that Black people have made to U.S. history with Black History Month. So often, our Black friends remain unseen, even when they take risks for themselves and even for complete strangers, like Dr. Daniel Hale Williams did in the summer of 1893. Daniel Hale Williams was born in 1856 and was one of 8 children in a family of barbers living in Pennsylvania. His father died of tuberculosis when Daniel was only 10 years old. His mother moved the family several times as she sought work and help from family members. Young Daniel ultimately became a shoemaker's apprentice, a job he really didn't like. So, he took a risk, and he left his job to go to college, earning a medical degree from Chicago Medical College in 1883. He was only 27 years old. After his internship, he went into private practice in an integrated neighborhood on Chicago's South Side. Dr. Williams was one of only 3 African-American doctors practicing in Chicago. He didn't care where you came from or what you looked like, black or white. Dr. Williams would treat you. But that wasn't the way medicine was practiced in our country's hospitals during this era. Racism and discrimination prohibited African Americans from being treated at most hospitals, and Black doctors and nurses were denied employment on hospital staff. So in 1891, Dr. Williams founded Provident Hospital and Training School for Nurses, making it the first hospital in the country with a nursing and medical intern program that hired African Americans. The hospital became the first medical facility in this country to have an interracial staff. One hot summer night in 1893, a young Chicagoan named James Cornish was stabbed in the chest and rushed to Provident Hospital. When Mr. Cornish started to go into shock, Dr. Williams suspected there was a deeper wound near the heart. He asked 6 doctors, 4 white and 2 black, to observe him while he operated. So in a cramped operating room with crude anesthesia, Dr. Williams performed the nation's first open heart surgery. The operation was done without x-rays, antibiotics, surgical prep work, or tools of modern surgery. Dr. Williams cut the rib cartilage and created a small trap door to the heart so he could see inside Mr. Cornish's damaged chest for the artery and the surrounding tissue. With the heart beating and blood transfusion impossible, Dr. Williams rinsed the chest cavity with a simple salt solution, held the edges of the palpitating wound with forceps, and sewed them back together. Only 51 days after his apparently lethal wound, Mr. James Cornish walked out of the Provident Hospital and lived for another 20 years after his landmark surgery. Perhaps that's the message we can take from Dr. Daniel Hale Williams. That we can take risks, moving from the comfort of what we know to embracing the unknown. This month, I challenge you to send a message of love to someone that you don't know. Maybe a neighbor, the delivery person helping your family. You don't even have to sign your name. Will you experiment with me? The next time we chat, I'd love to hear how your experiment in risking love worked out. I'm betting that many of us will feel really good about it. And a small act like this can build, helping us not to be so afraid to share the love with more acts of kindness and justice, helping to make the world a better place for us all.
Each Sunday at Beacon, we invite you to light a candle of sorrow, joy, grief, and celebration. On this Valentine's Day, maybe you are lighting a candle for a spouse, a partner, or someone for whom you hold deep affection, someone who is journeying with you on your spiritual path. Maybe you are remembering a broken relationship and how it feels to have a broken heart. Maybe you are kindling a light for forgiveness and repair, for peace, both within yourself and in the world. Perhaps you are holding in your heart someone the world has lost to the pandemic, or someone who is currently struggling physically, emotionally, or in some other way. You are welcome to light a candle in your home. We hope that you'll also lift up a name in the chat. We also light our candle of witness for Michael Lorenzo Dean, killed by a police officer after a traffic stop in Temple, Texas on December 2nd, 2019. Mike was born in Waco, Texas on May 5th, 1991. He graduated from Temple High School in Temple, Texas in 2010. He attended college there and was pursuing a business degree. He attended a New Day Fellowship Church in Temple. Mike is survived by his parents, Moses Dean Jr. and Christine Dean, and a host of siblings, relatives, and friends. He was almost 4 years old when the Deans adopted him and his 4 siblings. His mother, Christine, says Mike was a good-hearted person. She said he would do anything for anyone and gave God credit for everything. We light a candle of witness for Michael Lorenzo Dean. May this ritual of kindling light together offer us solidarity, community, and inspiration in our lives.
be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease. May you be whole. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be peaceful and at ease. May we be whole.
I invite you to get comfortable and to take a deep, cleansing breath in through the nose and holding it, and then exhaling it as far as it will go. And as you take a few more cleansing breaths, I invite you to recall a time in your life, a time as a child, maybe a time as a teenager or as a young adult, a formative moment where you took a risk. I invite you to recall your fear before you took the risk. Fear, anxiety. Where did you feel it in your body? Was it in your neck or your chest? Was it in your belly or in the arches of your feet? When you recall this moment of risk, can you still feel it in your body? Consider how you were able to welcome your fear. What was it trying to protect you from? Was it a loss of safety or security that you feared? Maybe you were afraid of a loss of affection or sense of belonging. Was your fear about losing power or control? How were you able to welcome your fear in spite of that? Recall how you were able to release your fears, your anxiety, so that you could take the risk, so that you could grow, so that you could be free. And as you go through the week, consider what is before you in your journey now. What risks do you need to take in order to grow, in order to be free? What fear do you need to welcome? Remember, as you lean into risk, that you have all you need within you, and that you are held in the power of community. Take another deep, cleansing breath. Blessed be.
Hello, my name is Charlene Walker, and I'm the Executive Director of Faith in New Jersey. Faith in New Jersey is the largest faith-based grassroots organizing entity within the state. We organize people of faith for racial, economic, and immigrant justice. This last year, we have been super busy. Our leaders reached into their neighborhoods and congregations to connect undocumented loved ones, returning citizens, and those that were facing economic hardship to funds through generous donors, distributing almost $1.5 million worth of aid. We distributed PPE in the hardest hit Black and Brown communities and met with decision makers on the state, local, and federal level. We successfully increased testing in Black and Brown communities that were originally neglected and made sure that we moved $600 million from the HEROES Act that was dedicated towards policing to slow the spread of COVID within our prisons and to increase funding to support domestic violence survivors. I believe that right now we are in this amazing window of opportunity. Well, if we get this moment right, we won't go back to what was before us, for it has failed us. Instead, we will actually build the beloved community. We will do this through a bold platform that believes in radical love that we will put into action, centering liberation, healing, and building power of those that are closest to hurt. Our racial justice Live Free work this year will center demanding funding for urban gun violence programs that are proven to work. We will build a Live Free coalition of youth organizers across the state fighting for racial justice. We will also build a street certified coalition of formerly incarcerated loved ones so they can design an organizing trajectory from their lived experience and imagination that dismantles this carceral state. We'll include making sure that we continue to fight for protecting our democracy, and that we will continue our immigrant justice work, as well as expanding access to healthcare to cover all kids, because Black and Brown children, about 80,000 of them are left out. I hope that today you can give a generous donation to help us to continue to support our work, and I hope that you'll join us along the way. Thank you.
I'm still moving to that song, Beloved. I Wish I Knew How by Billy Taylor, one of my favorite hymns that we have shared in our sanctuary and now virtually. Well, I'll be honest. At first I wondered, can we even do it virtually? I mean, it seemed like a huge risk. And what will people think of us if they find out and suddenly we pop up in their Facebook feed or on YouTube? We are all going to have to take the risk. So here goes. This is our first annual virtual Sex Sunday. Something about those modifiers doesn't sound quite right. Some of you may have heard the annual Sex Sunday is a Sunday, and certainly not the only day, that we discuss sexuality. Our faith is Unitarian Universalist, and why sexuality is core to our values and to our faith. While it is an unabashed ploy to get you to come to this Sunday service by entitling it Sex Sunday, in truth, our faith teaches a broad and inclusive understanding of sexuality. We understand it as informed by health and wellness experts to include sensuality, intimacy, sexualization, sexual identity, and yes, sexual health and reproduction. According to Our Whole Lives, the comprehensive sexual education program for lifespan, or all ages, quote, sexuality encompasses nearly every aspect of our being, from attitudes and values to feelings and experiences. It is influenced by the individual, family, culture, religion, spirituality, laws, professions, institutions, science, and politics. It is hardly something that could be captured in a few physical activities. We as Unitarian Universalists embrace that sexuality is good. This is an ancient heresy or truth choosing that generations of Unitarians, Universalists, and Unitarian Universalists have chosen. Not all, but many of our spiritual ancestors were prophets of liberating truths, both about being human and therefore about being a sexual being. Sadly, this is often still a revolutionary concept in our dominant culture. We do not, like some other religious teachings, separate flesh and spirit or body and soul, but instead understand how one may express the other and how both are holy, gifted, and wondrously made. One of the ways that oppression in our world, including white supremacy, works is by trying to control bodies and people. We are taught mistrust of our own bodies' desires and curiosities. What's more, sexuality can be viewed as something to be isolated, silenced, and shamed. Against this harmful backdrop, our faith seeks healing and wholeness through transparency, holy curiosity, body positivity, respect, knowledge, consent, and trust. When we are grounded in that holy sexuality, when it is integrated into our whole lives, the control of bodies that profits political ends and markets is demolished. This is why liberated sexuality is so dangerous to oppressive structures and systems. The pandemic has magnified for some of us the way the world tries to control, erase, or diminish our sexuality and, in turn, our humanity. For some of us, it may seem impossible to experience our sexuality in the midst of the lives we now find ourselves in. Alone, unknown, filled in a house with no room to sit or be quiet, let alone feel sexy, worked to exhaustion, or lonely tears. The pandemic has pushed our basic values up against our most basic needs, and in this pressure cooker, it can seem impossible to conceive of our sexuality. But I'm not here to give anyone online dating advice. Rather, as a theologian, I want to remind us of our core values in the midst of the disorientation engendered by stress. For many of our teens and singles, navigating online relationships, though, for teens with the additional risks of COVID-19 has brought parents and guardians into a host of loaded interactions where fear can dominate. I know our 15-year-old began an online relationship. I found myself both afraid and dismissive. It wasn't the best parenting moment. At first, I feared predators and exploitation. I led with all of this when I pronounced the rules. Dutifully fearful and unimpressed, I suspect. Said teenager nodded in agreement to my decree. Then, several weeks later, when they explained a complex dynamic arising in this virtual relationship online, I found myself being dismissive. Online relationships weren't real anyhow, and you're 15. Whatever. Thanks to some sage advice from Our Whole Lives and Dr. Melanie Davis, I discovered how wrong I was. In fact, Dr. Yolanda Turner found in her research, virtual relationships can have the same depth, the same arcs and richness that in-person relationships can have. And being dismissive about someone's sexuality in relationships wasn't exactly in my value set. But that's the thing. Our values need regular reminders, support, and tending in the context of community. Because the dominant culture is so strong, perhaps even stronger when our lives are restricted mostly to screens and media content that we do not create. Some of us, long before the pandemic, experienced daily interactions where our sexuality was derided, exploited, or made wholly invisible. We have been given stories that say because of ability or age or relationship status, a whole part of our humanity was unavailable or not permitted. I recall Anne-Marie sharing with me, my spouse Anne-Marie, the layers of invisibility she experienced as an older lesbian parent. After decades of feminist circles, lesbian communities, and consciousness raising, she found herself single parenting our twins for 5 months while I sold our house in North Carolina and completed my public ministry there. She would go into preschool, she said, and instantly become invisible. The assumed grandmother because of her age, without sexuality because of the trifecta of age, gender, and parenting. And suddenly the world had conceived of her a story that was 180 degrees different from the story she had been living for decades. I think of the way aging individuals of all genders are sometimes mocked or robbed of their sexuality. In the foreword to the book Sexuality and the Sacred, James Nelson illustrates the lifespan nature of sexuality with a loving story of his wife, Willis Clare. He shares, "It is now less than 3 months since my wife, Willis Clare, died. She had been my companion, closest friend, and life-giving lover through 56 years of marriage. In spite of a lengthy and physically ravaging illness, in spite of increasing and unremitting pain that often surely made her body feel like the enemy, in spite of relentless weight loss, Willis Clare was to me an utterly beautiful, sensuous, vibrant person to the end. Love poetry became an important part of our morning readings in that time. We cherished bathing each other tenderly in our shared morning showers. The intimacy of evening foot massages and bedtime caressing were intimate and anticipated parts of our ritual. Before sunrise on Willis Clare's last morning, I was beside her bed, keeping vigil in the inpatient hospice unit. Unconscious for several days, now her breathing began to change. The nurse came, examined her, and confirmed my suspicion, saying, "It won't be long now." Then the nurse added some of the most gracious and holy words I have ever heard. "Would you like to get in bed with Willis Clare?" She left and quietly shut the door. For the last 30 minutes of my beloved's life, I was in bed, holding her in close embrace, nestled together, skin touching skin. As her life ebbed, I whispered words of faith, hope, and love, including her favorite phrases from Dame Julian of Norwich. "And all shall be well. All manner of thing shall be well." Our last moments together were of profound, embodied intimacy. Sexuality is indeed about our whole lives. So how do we help one another when the scripts of the dominant world would cause us harm to ourselves and other beloveds? I think it comes down to risking a new love story. We have engaged all kinds of risk assessments in the last year having to do with social distances and masks and hand washing and crowds, indoor versus outdoor, and these were important, vital things. Perhaps now is the time to explore the stories about us that we have let inhabit our own hearts, that we can't be sexual, that our sexuality is something of days gone by, that being alone means a relationship is impossible or sexuality is done for, that there is a timestamp on our sexuality, or a shape, or a weight, or a skin tone, or a look, or an ability, or a gender, or a movement that is preferred to the holy body we inhabit in this moment. What if we risked a new story? Valentine's Day is pretty much a commercial crock of you know what, beloved. But real love is not. Real love isn't dead. And any attempt to ridicule or diminish love or monetize it into a single form can be turned on its own device for the sake of liberation. Today can be about radical new stories of loving oneself, of declaring queer love, love across decades, shared polyamorous love, single love, platonic love, erotic and filial love. Yesterday, my family made Valentines for all of our neighbors on our street. And as our neighbors opened their doors to receive some seriously corny Valentine's Day cards and chocolates, I noticed the reactions, the faces, even behind masks. Some were delighted and surprised. One man welled up with tears and kept asking, "Is this for me? This is for me." A neighbor whose husband died this year replied, "Thank you. I needed this." And we all stood 6 feet apart in silence for a while. I noticed how easy, all things considered, with the aid of small children, how easy it is to be loving and kind, to risk love. Perhaps that's a way that we can move forward. A gentleness that I saw some children move with yesterday. They didn't assume anything about the people they encountered except maybe that they would like chocolate and bad jokes. And in that, there was a freshness of story and space, a holy curiosity of being human together, a new story. I turned to my own teenager this week instead of leading with fear or ridicule, and asked me to tell them about their new love. I listened to this supposed not real relationship and discovered a new story about two tender-hearted people who are terribly shy, finding their way to each other in a global pandemic. In a leaders' meeting at our congregation yesterday, I shared this reading on love by Infleshed from the UUA's Worship Web Collective. Love cannot be bought or sold. It does not make a profit. Love does not hide from truth. Love dives deep. Love takes on flesh. Love is queer. Love is platonic. Love is erotic. Love is asexual. Love confronts evil. Love delights in pleasure. Love touches and weeps and flirts and feeds and creates. Love is risky. Love challenges systemic evil in all its forms. Love is simple, but not easy. Love is collective. Love rises up. Love apologizes. Love believes. Love corrects. Love holds accountable. Love pays reparations. Love heals. Love tells its story. Love embraces everyone, every creature, every creation. It knows us intimately. It holds us collectively. Love transcends every boundary that seeks to confine it. It will not tolerate violence in its name. It does no harm. It only sets free. Valentine's Day may indeed be a commercial crock, no doubt. And yet love endures in an uncorrupted, holy vessel of humanity across the world, changing and evolving through generations, undoing injustice, and promising yet a humanity we are still learning to trust and hold tenderly. Beloved, I hope you will risk that love, risk a new story of yourself. Risk abandoning the stories that cause suffering and harm and writing new ones. All of who you are, of who we are, our whole lives, the canon of a new faith, and yet an ancient, ecstatic spark that burns still. Follow the flame. Beloved, Spirit says, do. Blessed be. Ashe and Amen.
You got to do when the Spirit says do. You got to do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you got to do, oh Lord, you've got to do when the Spirit says do. You got to sing when the Spirit says sing. You got to sing when the Spirit says sing. When the Spirit says sing, you got to sing along. You got to sing when the Spirit says sing. You got to dance when the Spirit says dance. You got to dance when the Spirit says dance. When the Spirit says dance, you gotta dance all around. You got to dance when the Spirit says dance. got to do when the Spirit says do. You got to do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you got to do, oh Lord. You got to do when the Spirit says do.
Thank you, beloveds, for your presence this morning as we worship together. I wish you a double heaping of joy and love this Valentine's Day and every day this week. Thank you, Reverend Robin, for helping us consider the beauty and strength we can nurture in our virtual relationships, our old ones and those recently discovered during this pandemic. A special thanks to Misa Iwama and John O'Neill for the beauty of their musicianship. Thank you, Dennis Mannion and Tony O'Sullivan of the Racial Justice Task Force, for your stirring reminders that loving our world means listening to each other's stories and working towards lifting up everyone that we can, even those we may never meet. Beacon, you are now commissioned to take your love and be a blessing to this world. So go forth with a tender and grateful heart, remembering that you may be the only gospel that your neighbor experiences this week. So in all that you say and do, spread grace and love to everyone you encounter, be they online or standing 6 feet away. I will leave you with words of the poet Ruth Burden from her poem, The Risks of Love. No matter the outcome, having felt love, you will never be the same. It may scar your heart and soul and leave you only memories of forever. Or it may cause every day of your life to feel like there is no need for tomorrow. But love is worth it. It's worth the risk. For in all of life, love is truly the only risk worth taking. Amen. Ashe, and blessed be.